Anyone my convert story, it's been such a long time.
Well, I'm sure this could be the last one.
I'll cook up a nice one.
In the future, you can just tell.
I'm about 38 years old. I was born in a Hindu Brahmin family. Born in England, raised up between England and India. I embraced Islam about 23 years ago. I was 15 at the time. 15, 16. My uncle had died in very tragic circumstances around about the age of 15. And in the Hindu tradition, the eldest son has to perform the final funeral rites. And so he only had 3 daughters. I was the son of his elder brother, and I counted as his sort of eldest son. It was very close to him. So I ended up going to Banaras, which is a place in India, sometimes pronounced as Vanaras, which is a place where they perform the final rites, and where usually the body is taken, burnt, and turned into ashes, and flowed into the Ganges. So I went there, and I had to do a series of rites for my uncle. At the final point, I even saw the ashes of his body, and I saw this along the ghat, along the area where a lot of bodies are being burnt regularly, and they're turned into ashes and they literally flowed into the water. It kind of struck me that life is, at least the way we think of it, is very impermanent. I had a couple of friends at school who started to get more into their practice of Islam. And so I used to often debate with them women's rights and violence in Islam and all my little things. And I was quite good with words, so I found that I would win the arguments, but when I left them and I went home, I would lose the debate. Because at some point I knew that I was winning with points, but there's a deeper level of conviction that had started to rise in my heart about what's being said. And so the whole process just kept going, and I feel, looking back now, God sort of created a conflation of events that were happening at that time. And I was being exposed to Islam in different, people close to me. So my school teacher, she actually embraced Islam. And it was just, my life changed after that. But, later on I heard that, there's that whomsoever Allah wills to guide, He gives them expansion. He expands his chest lil Islam, he expands his chest for God. And sometimes there's a term, I think it's called yuqallib, to literally turn a person. And that was my sensation. I literally felt I was turned and I was span, and it was like this sense of expansion. So, yeah. And then what was really interesting is the next day when I told people I wanted to become Muslim, and I said what I did, the way you become Muslim, it was just a coming home. It's like, oh, this is me. What is your greatest truth? What do you really ascribe to? But just having that guidance, just knowing that there is guidance, just knowing that there is a point, knowing was really, really, really peaceful. And I remember it was so overpowering, and it was so comforting that somewhat in my naivety as a 16-year-old, it was like, wow, it should be easy. I just tell everyone and they'll see it exactly the way I do, especially the family. And it wasn't the case, because a lot of these things are not in our own hands.